Hey everybody, this is going to be a quick little topical video. Still got some grass to cut there and this going on back here, a whole lot of brush to get rid of. I want to talk today a little bit about 9/11 because, it was a couple days ago. Wasn't really planning on making a video about that, but, here we are. Again, sorta, depending on how you look at it. I wasn't sure that would take off that well. Maybe we'll get rid of all the brush tonight. Anyway, I was in grade 4 when 9/11 happened. I kind of remember being in school. I remember all the adults being pretty freaked out. That's more or less what it was for me. I got home, got to see it all on TV going on. That's, for our generation, people who would have been in grade 4 at the time and right around there, I think it was more about what happened afterwards than the actual event. Obviously, if you're an American, and especially if you're a New Yorker, it's going to be a little bit different for you guys. But for the rest of us, it was kind of the way the world changed, which was the kind of the thing. We are getting snowed on here. I'm gonna shift our angle a little bit because, I am getting covered in ashes. But yeah, what's going on now reminds me a fair bit of the world after 9/11. Not so much in the immediate response to the event and all that kind of thing, but more with the Patriot Act side to things. The Patriot Act, all the increased security culture. Some people call it security theater. I'm not sure how much of it actually proved to be useful in the aftermath or whatever, but it's debatable. The world changed after 9/11, and for better or worse, it seems like we are in a changed world after COVID-19 too. And hopefully we get some semblance of the sanity from the old world in combination with the changes that we need to make and that are, whether we like it or not, seem to be being facilitated for us. But I care about all voices on this issue, specifically the 9/11 issue. There's, even 20 years later, there are a lot of people who say 9/11 was an inside job. And the unfortunately prevalent counterpoint or opposite view to that seems to be 9/11 was the expectable response to US imperialism. And some people even go so far as to say Americans should just suck it up and get over it. Was what it was. You get what you get when you try and be world police. And yeah, I think the more important thing to consider is what are the facts around what happened and why did it happen. And some people think it's as simple as that expected response bullshit. But I think I'm more curious in the whys and the whos than the whats, you know what I mean? And as far as, was it a controlled demolition? Was it the planes? Was it a combination? What exactly happened that day? Firefighters are 9/11 is a big thing for firefighters. There were a lot of firefighters that died that day, and people care about what exactly it was that happened. A lot of people focus on jet fuel can't melt steel beams, but my understanding about the whole thing at this point is it wasn't so much the jet fuel liquefying the steel beams as it was the structure becoming weaker based on each subsequent floor collapsing on the one underneath it. So you got to think, it's not so much the steel beams liquefying and the entire structure just melting. It's the beams becoming structurally unsound enough to the point where the floor collapses. And as the floors collapse, there is that much more weight because there's that much more floor above it collapsing. So each floor falls onto the next, there's more floors, building comes down. And I'm no expert, I'm not an architect, I'm not one of these guys that has been spending the last 2 decades dedicated to uncovering the truth about that event. I'm just going by what all the rest of y'all, like, we've all just kind of lived through the last 2 decades, and that's kind of where I'm at. Now, is that me saying there is nothing sketchy as far as 9/11 goes? Absolutely not. I value the conspiracy-minded folks and their input on these kind of things. I value that a hell of a lot, because whether or not it was a controlled demolition, whether it was all thermite, or if it really was the planes and just the physics of it work, there are sketchy questions as far as who was in power, what went on, were there a bunch of Saudi nationals flew out of the States at the time where all the other flights were being grounded? There are questions, is what I'm saying, and as far as getting the answers we need, we should be willing to listen to what even, or maybe even especially, the conspiracy theorists who have been pouring their time and effort over the past 2 decades into knowing what the truth is. Let's find out what they think, and we can verify or debunk it based on the theories and the evidence they have for those theories, as opposed to where we are now, which is a culture that seems increasingly satisfied with accepting the official story. I don't believe it about 9/11 100%, and I certainly don't believe it about the world we're in right now. I don't think anybody in the world is going hard enough at establishing where the responsibility for what has triggered all this really came from. Was it from a Chinese lab, that Chinese wet market, the American military at the Chinese World Military Games event, some other source in America, Australia, Canada? We really don't know, and I'm curious. There's the whole thing about that facility in or near Winnipeg. What I'm saying here is freedom of speech is important, not only so we're freely able to express ourselves, but so we're freely able to try and investigate the truth, because we're not really getting it from official sources, at least not the whole truth, and there is a lot of fake news out there, and more of us should be empowered and willing to dive into it, as inconvenient as it would be to put that much time into just debunking what may be a bunch of lies. We got to be open enough to be like, yeah, let's find out what the truth is. Anyway, it's getting dark. Y'all have a good night.